Okay, welcome to another video from Mr. Esterbrooks. This is primarily for my IED students. We're here in Autodesk Inventor 2018, and we're going to model this part here today. This is an example of a puzzle cube part. So this is where we're going. We're going to start from scratch by creating a new part using the standard English IPT template, which will give us the proper units. Now, the very first thing I want you to do when you create a part is to name it in the browser. So I like to call this the Cubert part, but you're going to call this, say, black part or yellow part or whatever color part that it is. So yeah, we'll call it yellow, and I'll try to remember to make it yellow. Um, so here we are. We've got an empty model. The first thing we need to do is create a sketch, a 2D sketch. So you should it should say Start 2D Sketch here. If it doesn't, then you need to click on this and pick a 2D sketch. If it says Start 2D Sketch, just click right there. Now, it doesn't really matter which plane you start on unless you're going to go and send this out to a CNC machine or say a 3D printer because those types of machines use the Z-axis for the third dimension. So I'm going to create it on the XY plane, but we can always rotate those later, so it doesn't really matter too much. Now, the way I'm going to model this, if I go back to the completed one, you need to look at your part and figure out how you're going to slice this, essentially, is how I think about it. And you'll notice from the bottom it looks like an L. So we're going to start with that L shape. You do not just want to model a bunch of cubes and stick those together. Now this part is very, very important. You must start drawing your sketch at the origin. If you go and create your geometry out in the middle of nowhere, you're going to have all kinds of problems. So you notice when I snap to the origin, I get a little green little dot there. So that's what I want. Now I'm not going to worry too much about my dimensions. I'm just going to make them approximately the right size, which is 0.75 inches per cube. So I'm just going to quickly kind of model an L shape here without too much attention to detail. I do want to make sure my lines are all horizontal and vertical. And then you'll notice part of this is green and part is purple. I'm going to ask that all of your models are fully constrained. That means it should be 100% purple. If you have any unconstrained geometry, it shows up as green, and that means I can do this. I can stretch it around and change the size and the shape, and that's not good. So the first thing we need to do is dimension one of these lines, and each cube in this puzzle cube part, which is a 3 by 3 by 3 puzzle cube, is going to be 0.75 inches. Now, in fact, I only need to dimension one line, and then I'm going to come up and use my geometric constraints to make that line equal to that line. See how I did that? And you'll notice the two equals. Then I go back and I make that line equal to this line. And one last line needs to be made equal, and there we go. Now I've got a fully constrained sketch, because it's all purple, with only one dimension. And then I can finish the sketch and go to my extrude command. And here's where we need to make sure the depth of that extrusion is the same as each of the cubes. So rather than just say 0.75 here, we're going to do what's called parametric modeling. Parametric modeling is something that we'll get into a lot later on, but the D0 should be the very first dimension you created. If you created some dimensions and deleted them, that may be D1, D2, D3, or if you can't figure it out, you'll have to go back and look at your parametric, your dimensions, but I'll show you how to do that later. So if I say D0, that'll make it the same depth as that first line that I dimensioned. All right. Now, if you couldn't find, if your D0 didn't work, you can go to Manage Parameters, and this will show you all your dimensions in the database. So notice my D0 is the very first dimension I created, and all my other dimensions are based on D0. So D1 is based on D0. D2 is an angular dimension, but we can ignore that. All right, so I've got the bottom part of my Cubert cube here, what's going to be my yellow piece. Next thing I want to do is go back and create a sketch on that surface. And then all I need to do here is create a rectangle. And notice I'm going to snap again. It's a little green ball. Snap there and snap there, the little green ball. Notice I didn't have to put in any constraints or any dimensions there. It automatically snapped on. And when I do extrude there, again, I do D0. And there's my three-dimensional cubert part. The last thing I need to do is go over and pick a color. Now this, later on we're going to see how you can choose materials over on this column. But for now we're just going to slap a coat of paint on it. And I'm going to go find hopefully a yellow in here somewhere under Y, WXY. There's a yellow. And there's essentially my finished puzzle cube part. So you'll notice I've got the browser over here. It shows me 2 extrusions only. And I've got my part named up there. So that's what we're looking for. And the last thing you should do, actually you should do this more than, at the very end, is save your part. I already have a yellow part, so we're going to call this yellow part B, just so it doesn't overwrite that. There's the bell, which must mean it's time for class. Thanks for watching.